First contact fallout. Commander Harlow Jensen stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Concordia, watching as the crystalline spires of the Arcturian capital glittered beneath the light of 3 moons. After 2 decades of distant communications and cautious trades, humanity was finally invited to establish formal relations with the Arcturians, a species known for their advanced technology and fierce warrior culture. "Nervous, Commander?" asked Lieutenant Rodrigo Alvarez, adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform. "Just calculating all the ways this could go wrong," Harlow replied, straightening her own dress blues. At 35, she had more experience with first-contact scenarios than anyone else in Earth's diplomatic corps. 6 successful missions had earned her a reputation as the person you sent when failure wasn't an option. The Arcturians were different, though. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with iridescent scaled skin and remarkable strength, they had remained aloof from the galactic community. Their technological advancements were coveted by many, but few had ever been permitted to set foot on their homeworld. "Final approach to Nyxeris Central Landing Platform," announced the pilot. "Arcturian escort ships are guiding us in." Harlow took a deep breath. "Remember the briefing. No sudden movements, maintain eye contact but don't stare, and whatever you do, don't touch them without explicit permission." The landing was smooth despite Harlow's concerns. As the ramp descended, she stepped forward, leading a team of 5 diplomats into the amber light of Arcturus Prime. A delegation awaited them, tall, dignified Arcturians with scales that shifted between deep blue and purple. "Greetings from Earth," Harlow said, bowing slightly in the manner their cultural specialists had advised. "I am Commander Harlow Jensen, representative of the United Earth Alliance." The tallest Arcturian stepped forward. "I am Vornthal, Royal Advisor. The High Council welcomes you to Nyxeris." His voice was melodic yet powerful. "Princess Nyxandra awaits your delegation in the Grand Hall." They were escorted through massive archways carved from what appeared to be single crystals. The architecture was organic yet precisely mathematical, with corridors that seemed to flow rather than connect. The Grand Hall took Harlow's breath away. Vaulted ceilings stretched upward for hundreds of feet, supported by graceful columns that resembled frozen waterfalls. At the center, a raised dais held an intricate throne where a regal Arcturian sat watching their approach. Princess Nyxandra was striking even by Arcturian standards. Her scales shimmered with an almost luminescent quality, and ornate metal adorned her crest. She studied the humans with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Ambassador Jensen," she spoke, her voice carrying effortlessly across the hall. "Your reputation precedes you. We have observed your diplomatic achievements from afar." Harlow maintained her composure despite her surprise. "Your Highness honors me with your knowledge of my work." "Knowledge is power," Nyxandra replied, rising from her throne. "Come, we have prepared a welcoming ceremony." The delegation followed the princess to an adjacent chamber where an elaborate display of Arcturian culture awaited, musical instruments, technological marvels, and a feast of foods deemed safe for human consumption. As they conversed, Harlow noticed subtle tensions among the Arcturian nobles. Whispered conversations, pointed glances. Her instincts, honed through years of diplomatic navigation, alerted her that something was amiss. "Your technology is remarkable," Harlow commented, admiring a floating crystal that seemed to generate its own light. "Especially your energy systems. We have mastered what you call quantum harmonization," Nyxandra explained. "It powers our cities, our ships, our—" A deafening explosion interrupted her words. The far wall shattered inward, sending crystalline shards flying across the chamber. Harlow's training kicked in immediately. "Everyone down," she shouted, pulling Lieutenant Alvarez behind a solid table. Through the smoke and chaos, she spotted masked figures rushing into the room. Their target was clear, they moved directly toward Princess Nyxandra, weapons raised. Without hesitation, Harlow sprinted across the debris-strewn floor. The princess was rising, clearly prepared to defend herself, but a second explosion knocked her off balance. As the nearest attacker fired a pulse weapon, Harlow launched herself forward, tackling Nyxandra out of the weapon's path. They tumbled behind a fallen column, the energy blast scorching the floor where the princess had stood moments before. Harlow immediately positioned herself between Nyxandra and the attackers, drawing her ceremonial sidearm, the only weapon Earth's diplomats were permitted to carry. "Stay down, Your Highness," she ordered, firing with precision at the nearest attacker. The Arcturian guards rallied quickly, their superior strength and combat training making short work of the assailants. Within minutes, the skirmish was over, the attackers either captured or fled. As the smoke cleared, Harlow helped Nyxandra to her feet. "Are you injured, Your Highness?" The princess stared at Harlow with an expression the human couldn't interpret. Around them, the Arcturian nobles had fallen completely silent, many looking on with what appeared to be shock. "You placed yourself between me and death," Nyxandra stated, her voice carrying a strange intensity. "It's my duty to protect," Harlow replied simply. Any human would have done the same. Vornthal approached, bowing deeply to both of them. "Princess, the attackers have been identified as members of the Sundered faction. Security is sweeping the palace." Nyxandra nodded but kept her eyes fixed on Harlow. "Commander Jensen, are you aware of what you have just done?" "I helped protect you from an assassination attempt," Harlow answered, suddenly uncertain. "You have invoked the right of Zirvale," Vornthal explained, his tone solemn. "By risking your life for our princess and shedding blood in her defense, you have, according to our most sacred laws, initiated a royal binding contract." Harlow's diplomatic poise faltered. What? "In our culture," Nyxandra said, her scales shifting to a vibrant blue, "what you have done is the highest form of proposal. You have asked for my hand in union." Cultural misunderstandings. Harlow stood frozen, her mind racing to process Vornthal's words. The diplomatic chamber had fallen into a charged silence, with every Arcturian noble staring at her with varying expressions of shock, curiosity, and in some cases, clear disapproval. "There must be some misunderstanding," Harlow finally managed, careful to keep her voice calm despite her internal panic. "I was simply performing my duty as a diplomat and as a human being." Nyxandra tilted her head, her luminescent scales shifting to a thoughtful violet hue. "Fascinating. You acted without knowledge of our customs, yet fulfilled the requirements of our most sacred ritual perfectly." Lieutenant Alvarez approached cautiously, his face pale. "Commander, perhaps we should request a moment to consult with the Earth Diplomatic Corps." Before Harlow could respond, the grand doors swung open, and an imposing Arcturian male strode in. His scales were darker, almost midnight blue, and elaborate metal adornment signified high rank. Every Arcturian in the room, save for the princess, lowered their heads slightly. "Father," Nyxandra acknowledged. "The human ambassador has invoked the right of Zirvale." Emperor Zorithmal surveyed the scene, his eyes narrowing as they settled on Harlow. "So I have been informed. Most unexpected." His voice was deeper than any Harlow had heard, resonating through her chest like distant thunder. Harlow stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Your Imperial Majesty, I acted only to protect Princess Nyxandra from harm. I had no knowledge of this ritual or its implications." "Ignorance of our ways does not negate the sanctity of the rite," the Emperor replied. "For generations, the Zirvale has determined royal unions. It is no small thing to shield another with your life, especially for beings as fragile as humans." An older Arcturian that Harlow recognized as the royal historian approached. "If I may, Your Majesty, there is precedent for this situation. The ancient codex speaks of exceptions when outsiders are involved." "Exceptions?" Harlow asked hopefully. The historian nodded. "The right can be contested through a series of trials, or—" He hesitated, declined entirely, though such rejection carries significant diplomatic consequences. Emperor Zorithmal's expression hardened. To reject the right would be to declare that humans value neither honor nor commitment. It would end these negotiations before they begin. Harlow felt the weight of Earth's diplomatic mission crushing down on her shoulders. 20 years of careful communication, leading to this first formal contact, she couldn't allow it to fail because of a cultural misunderstanding. What exactly would these trials entail? She asked carefully. Nyxandra stepped forward. 3 challenges to prove worthiness. Strength, wisdom, and courage. No human has ever completed even one. And if I succeed, then you would have earned the right to formalize or respectfully decline the union without offense, the Emperor explained. But failure in any trial would be seen as proof that humans lack the qualities necessary for true alliance with Arcturus. Harlow straightened her shoulders. Then I accept the trials. The announcement sent murmurs rippling through the gathered Arcturians. Nyxandra's scales flickered with an emotion Harlow couldn't interpret. Ambassador Jensen, the princess said quietly, you need not do this. I can petition for leniency. With respect, Your Highness, I believe this is the best path forward, Harlow replied. My mission is to establish relations between our worlds. If demonstrating human qualities through these trials will help, then that's what I'll do. Emperor Zorithmal nodded solemnly. It is decided. The trials will commence tomorrow at first moonrise. Until then, you and your team will be given quarters in the diplomatic wing. As the Arcturians dispersed, Lieutenant Alvarez approached Harlow. Commander, have you lost your mind? You can't possibly compete physically with an Arcturian. I don't intend to, Harlow replied quietly. I intend to show them something different, something uniquely human. Later that evening, in her assigned quarters, Harlow communicated the situation to Earth Command. Their response was predictably alarmed, but ultimately supportive. The stakes were too high to back down now. A soft chime announced a visitor. When Harlow opened the door, she found Princess Nyxandra waiting, having exchanged her ceremonial attire for simpler garments. May I enter? The princess asked. Harlow nodded, stepping aside. Of course, Your Highness. Please, when we are alone, call me Nyx, she said, gliding into the room with fluid grace. I came to apologize for the position you find yourself in. No apology needed, Harlow replied. Cultural differences are expected in first contact situations. Nyx studied her with those light-absorbing eyes. You are remarkably calm for someone who has accidentally proposed marriage to an alien princess. Despite everything, Harlow laughed. I've been in stranger diplomatic situations, though admittedly none quite this personal. You should know that there are those at court who will not make these trials easy for you, Nyx warned. My cousin, Prince Dravkor, has long sought to strengthen his claim to the throne through union with me. He will see you as a threat. Politics are the same everywhere, it seems, Harlow observed. Royal courts on Earth function similarly for centuries. Nyx moved to the window, gazing out at the 3 moons rising over the crystalline city. What drives you, Harlow Jensen? Most beings would seek escape from this situation, not embrace it. Harlow considered the question carefully. Humanity has always pushed boundaries, sought understanding. When we ventured into space, we carried that curiosity with us. I believe connections between different species make us all stronger. Even connections forged through misunderstanding? Nyx asked, turning back to face her. Especially those, Harlow smiled. Some of humanity's greatest alliances began with mistakes. The princess's scales shimmered with a warm copper tone. You are unlike any being I have encountered. Perhaps these trials will prove interesting after all. As Nyxandra departed, Harlow returned to studying the limited information available on Arcturian culture and physiology. Tomorrow would test not just her abilities, but humanity's readiness to join the wider galactic community. What she didn't see was the shadow that moved away from her door after the princess left, the form of Prince Dravkor, his scales dark with anger, already plotting to ensure the human would fail spectacularly in the trials to come. The final trial and resolution. The first 2 trials had tested Harlow beyond anything she had experienced in her years of diplomatic service. The trial of strength had initially seemed impossible. How could a human possibly compete with Arcturians in pure physical prowess? Yet Harlow had surprised everyone by utilizing human ingenuity, employing leverage and strategy rather than brute force to move the ancient stone monolith. The trial of wisdom had been equally challenging, requiring her to navigate a complex maze of Arcturian logic puzzles that shifted and changed with each step. She had barely succeeded, drawing on Earth's diverse philosophical traditions to find solutions the Arcturians hadn't anticipated. Now, as the third moon rose over the crystalline spires of Nyxeris, Harlow stood before the final challenge, the trial of courage. Emperor Zorithmal and the royal court observed from elevated platforms surrounding the ancient arena. Nyxandra watched intently, her scales shimmering with a mixture of concern and something deeper that Harlow couldn't quite identify. The final trial will test not just your bravery, but your commitment to understanding, announced the Emperor. You will enter the Chamber of Truths, where you will face your deepest fears made manifest by our ancestral technology. Few Arcturians complete this trial without calling for mercy. Prince Dravkor stepped forward, his dark scales gleaming with satisfaction. The human will fail. Their species is ruled by fear, it's why they arm their diplomatic vessels and send soldiers as ambassadors. We arm ourselves because the universe is dangerous, as recent events here have demonstrated, Harlow replied calmly. But courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action despite fear. The massive doors to the Chamber of Truth swung open, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. Harlow stepped forward, pausing only when Nyx approached. No one would blame you for withdrawing now, the princess said quietly. You have already shown more capability than any expected. Harlow smiled. I didn't come this far to turn back, Your Highness. Besides, I think we both know this is about more than just a misunderstood ritual now. Nyx's scales flashed briefly with a warm copper glow. Indeed. Be careful, Harlow Jensen. The chamber reveals what you fear most, not what you think you fear. With a nod, Harlow stepped into the darkness. The doors sealed behind her with a resonant boom that echoed through her bones. For several moments, there was nothing but silence and complete darkness. Then, gradually, the chamber began to glow with a soft, ambient light. The empty space transformed around her, reconstructing with perfect detail the bridge of the Earth ship Defiant, the vessel she had served on during the Proxima Centauri crisis 5 years earlier. The ship where 23 crew members had died under her command during first contact gone catastrophically wrong. No, Harlow whispered, recognizing the cruel precision of the Arcturian technology. It hadn't manifested some monster or physical threat, it had recreated her greatest failure. The simulation was perfect, down to the faces of her former crewmates turning to her for leadership as the alien vessel opened fire without warning. Captain Takashi's voice came through the comm, asking for her assessment, waiting for her diplomatic expertise that had failed them all. Harlow's heart hammered in her chest as the scenario played out. She knew it wasn't real, knew this was a test, but the guilt and fear felt as fresh as they had 5 years ago. Every decision point approached, every moment where different choices might have saved lives. This time, however, something was different. As she watched the scenario unfold, Harlow realized she was being given a chance not just to relive her failure, but to understand it from perspectives she'd never considered. The chamber wasn't just showing her fear, it was showing her truth. The simulation shifted, allowing her to see from the alien vessel's viewpoint, revealing miscommunications and cultural factors she couldn't have known at the time. It showed her the ripple effects of the tragedy, how it had led to improved protocols that saved thousands of lives in subsequent encounters. I understand now, Harlow said aloud, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. The past cannot be changed, but it can be learned from. I carry those losses with me not as a burden, but as knowledge dearly bought. The simulation dissolved around her, returning to darkness before the chamber doors slowly opened. Harlow stepped out, blinking in the light, to find the entire court watching in silent astonishment. Emperor Zorithmal descended from his platform. The Chamber of Truths has judged you, Harlow Jensen of Earth. It shows each being differently, but always reveals one's true nature. He turned to address the assembly. The human has completed all 3 trials, something no non-Arcturian has ever achieved. Prince Dravkor pushed forward. Impossible. The chamber must have malfunctioned. The ancestral technologies do not malfunction, Nixandra stated firmly, approaching Harlow. Ambassador Jensen has proven herself worthy according to our oldest traditions. The Emperor nodded. Indeed. By our laws, you now have the right to formalize the Zirvale union with my daughter, or to respectfully decline without offense to our people. A hush fell over the assembly. All eyes turned to Harlow, awaiting her decision. She took a deep breath. Your Imperial Majesty, I am deeply honored by the trials and what they represent. I have come to respect your culture and your daughter greatly. Harlow glanced at Nix, whose scales had taken on a subtle rose hue. However, I believe both our peoples would be better served by a different kind of union first. Explain, the Emperor commanded. I propose an alliance between Earth and Arcturus, not through marriage, but through mutual respect and cooperation. Let us build understanding between our species before considering personal unions. Nixandra stepped forward. Father, the ambassador speaks wisely. Perhaps this is why the chamber judged her worthy, she sees beyond immediate gain to long-term harmony. Emperor Zorith Mal considered for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Once again, the human surprises us with perspective we had not considered. He turned to address the court. Let it be known that Earth and Arcturus shall forge a formal alliance, with Ambassador Jensen as its architect. The announcement sent ripples of conversation through the assembly. Prince Dravkor stormed away, his political aspirations temporarily thwarted, while most of the court seemed genuinely intrigued by this unexpected development. Later, as the diplomatic teams began drafting the foundation documents for the new alliance, Nixandra found Harlow alone on one of the palace's crystal balconies, gazing up at the 3 moons. You could have claimed a royal union, Nix said, joining her at the railing. Many would have done so for the power it offered. Harlow smiled. That would have been the wrong foundation for anything meaningful between us or our peoples. Between us? Nix's scales shimmered with that warm copper tone Harlow had come to recognize as amusement or interest. Figure of speech, Harlow replied, though her slight blush suggested otherwise. The Zirvale right remains valid, Nix noted casually. It simply awaits completion, should circumstances ever prove favorable. Harlow turned to face the princess. Are you saying what I think you're saying, Your Highness? I'm saying that diplomacy, like relationships, benefits from proper timing and foundation. Nix's eyes sparkled with intelligence and something more. The alliance you've proposed gives us both time to explore possibilities. I've always believed in keeping diplomatic channels open, Harlow replied with a smile. Below them, in the grand chambers of the palace, humans and Arcturians began the careful dance of building understanding across vast cultural differences. Neither species could have predicted this outcome when the Concordia first entered orbit, but both were now stepping into a future of unexpected possibilities, all because one human diplomat had instinctively acted to protect an alien princess. As the first stars appeared in the Arcturian sky, Harlow realized that sometimes the most profound connections begin with simple actions and misunderstandings. Humanity's place in the galaxy would be defined not by strength alone, but by the courage to reach across differences and the wisdom to build bridges where others saw only chasms. To new beginnings, Harlow said, raising her glass of Arcturian crystal water in a toast. To unexpected journeys, Nixandra replied, her scales glowing like captured starlight as their glasses clinked together, sealing a promise of things to come.